Lucy worked as a mechanic's assistant. Her job was to fix the broken machines that kept the prison running. The life support systems, the heating units, the air filters, all of them were old and constantly breaking down. Her boss was a massive alien named Grax. He had 4 arms and skin like gray stone. He barely spoke to her except to give orders or complain. "Humans are too soft," Grax would say, shaking his large head. "Too emotional. Why did they send you here?" Lucy never answered. She just did her work and tried to stay out of trouble. She knew most aliens thought humans were weak. Humans cried too easily. They cared too much about things that didn't matter. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and most species still didn't take them seriously. The prison held the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Lucy had heard stories about the creatures locked in the deep levels. Warlords who had destroyed entire planets. Pirates who had killed thousands. Scientists who had created terrible weapons. The Galactic Consortium kept them all here, far away from civilization where they could never escape. Lucy had been working on Krova's 7 for 6 months when everything changed. It started with a simple repair order. A heating conduit in sublevel 9 was broken, and someone needed to fix it. Grax was busy with another job, so he sent Lucy. "Follow the map," he told her, handing her a tablet. "Fix the conduit. Come back. Don't touch anything else." Lucy took the elevator down. She went past level 5 where the regular prisoners were kept. Past level 7 where the dangerous ones lived. When she reached level 9, the doors opened with a hiss of cold air. It was freezing down there. Lucy could see her breath in the air. The lights were dim, flickering like dying stars. She checked her tablet and started walking down the corridor, following the map to the broken conduit. But something was wrong. The map showed the conduit should be at the end of a short hallway. Instead, Lucy found herself standing in front of a massive vault door. It was made of black metal and covered in glowing symbols she didn't recognize. Red lights blinked around the frame. This wasn't on the map. Lucy knew she should turn around. She should go back upstairs and tell Grax about the mistake. But she was curious. Why would there be a vault down here that wasn't on any map? What were they hiding? She stepped closer to the door. There was a small window made of thick glass. Lucy stood on her toes and looked through it. Her breath caught in her throat. Inside the vault was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It was enormous, easily 20 feet tall, with scales that shimmered like dying embers. It had the body of a dragon from old Earth legends, powerful legs, massive wings folded against its back, a long tail that coiled around its body. But it was chained. Thick glowing chains wrapped around its neck, legs, and wings. The chains hummed with power, pulsing with strange blue light. The creature's head hung low. Its eyes were half closed, dimmed by centuries of suffering. The vault was deliberately kept freezing cold. Lucy could see frost forming on the creature's scales. She realized she was looking at Draconeth. She had heard the name whispered in the cafeteria, spoken by guards who'd had too much to drink. The last of the Flame Ancients. A species of intelligent dragon-like beings who had once ruled entire star systems. The Consortium had hunted them down 300 years ago because they refused to submit to galactic law. They were all killed. All except this one. They kept him alive as a warning. A trophy. Proof that no one could stand against the Consortium. Lucy stared at him through the window. The other aliens on the station called him a monster. They said he had destroyed worlds, killed millions. They said he was too dangerous to ever be released. But looking at him now, chained in the freezing darkness, barely alive, Lucy didn't see a monster. She saw someone who was suffering. Someone who was alone. Someone who had been forgotten by the entire galaxy. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Lucy, girl, you've always had too much heart. You see someone hurting, you can't just walk away." Lucy knew she should leave. She knew she should forget what she'd seen. But she couldn't. That night, lying in her small bunk, she couldn't stop thinking about those dimmed eyes, those heavy chains, that frozen prison. 3 days later, against every rule and regulation, Lucy returned to sublevel 9. She stood in front of the vault door and pressed the intercom button. "Hello," she said softly. "Can you hear me?" For a long moment there was only silence. Then, like distant thunder, a voice answered. "Who are you?" Lucy's heart pounded in her chest. The voice that answered her was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. It sounded tired, as if speaking took all the energy he had left. "My name is Lucy," she said, pressing her face closer to the intercom. "I'm a mechanic. I work here." There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again. "Why are you here, Lucy the mechanic?" "I saw you 3 days ago. I couldn't stop thinking about you. You should leave, the dragon said. Humans should not be near me. They say I am dangerous. Are you? Lucy asked. Another pause. I was. Long ago. Now I am simply cold. Lucy visited him every day after that. She would finish her work quickly, then slip down to sub-level 9 when the guards changed shifts. She learned that the guards rarely checked the vault. Draconith had been there for so long that they had stopped paying attention to him. Through the intercom they talked. At first, Draconith said very little. He seemed surprised that anyone would want to speak with him. But slowly he began to tell Lucy his story. My people were called the Flame Ancients, he said. We lived for thousands of years. We could survive in the hearts of stars. Fire was our blood, heat was our life. What happened to them? Lucy asked. The consortium came to our worlds 300 years ago. They wanted us to join their empire to follow their laws. My people refused. We had lived free since the beginning of time. We would not bow to anyone. His voice grew quieter. So they declared us enemies. They hunted us across the galaxy. They killed us one by one until only I remained. Why didn't they kill you too? They wanted a trophy. Proof that even the mighty Flame Ancients could be broken. They put me in this frozen cage and left me here to fade away slowly. Lucy felt anger burning in her chest. That's not justice. That's cruelty. Your species understands this, Draconith said. Other species see only power and weakness. But humans see something else. Something they call fairness. Over the weeks, Lucy noticed that Draconith was dying. Each time she visited, his voice was weaker. His eyes, which she could see through the window, grew dimmer. The cold was killing him degree by degree. The guards fed him once a day. They pushed a bowl of gray nutrient paste through a slot in the door. Lucy watched one day as Draconith barely lifted his head to eat it. The paste was cold and lifeless, designed only to keep prisoners alive, not to nourish them. Don't you get anything warm? Lucy asked. Warm? Draconith sounded confused, as if he had forgotten what warmth felt like. No, nothing warm. Not for 300 years. That night Lucy couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what her grandmother used to say back on Earth. When someone is hurting, you bring them soup. Simple, but it helps. A warm meal reminds people they're not alone. Lucy made a decision. It was dangerous and completely against the rules. She could lose her job or even be arrested. But she couldn't stand by and watch Draconith suffer anymore. The next day she went to the cafeteria kitchen after her shift. She told the cook, a friendly woman named Margaret, that she wanted to make something from an old family recipe. Margaret raised an eyebrow but let her use the stove. Lucy made soup the way her grandmother had taught her. Real vegetables from the hydroponics bay, carrots, potatoes, onions. She added herbs and salt. She let it simmer until the smell filled the kitchen with warmth and comfort. She poured the soup into a sealed container and hid it under her jacket. Her hands shook as she took the elevator down to sub-level 9. If anyone caught her, she would be in serious trouble. The vault door loomed in front of her. Lucy opened the small feeding slot and carefully pushed the container through. Draconith, she whispered into the intercom. I brought you something. She heard movement inside. Then silence. What is this? His voice came back, filled with wonder. It's soup. Swarm. Please drink it. Lucy waited, her heart racing. She heard liquid being sipped. Then she heard something that made her freeze. Draconith was crying. The sound started as a low rumble, then grew into something that shook the walls. Through the window, Lucy saw tears rolling down his ancient face. But these weren't normal tears. They glowed with inner fire like liquid gold, steaming in the cold air. I had forgotten, Draconith's voice cracked. I had forgotten what kindness feels like. The glowing tears fell onto the quantum chains wrapped around his body. Where they touched, the chains began to hiss and smoke. The blue light flickered. Lucy's eyes widened. What's happening? I don't know, Draconith whispered. But I feel something. Something I haven't felt in centuries. I feel hope. Lucy had to leave before the guards came. She ran back to the elevator, her mind spinning. She didn't know what she had started. She only knew that for the first time since coming to this terrible place, she had done something that mattered. That night the chains began to melt. The alarms started at 3 in the morning. They screamed through every level of the prison, waking everyone from sleep. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Guards ran in every direction, shouting orders that no one could hear over the noise. Lucy sat up in her bunk, her heart racing. She had never heard the prison alarms before. Something terrible must have happened. Everyone stay in your quarters, a voice boomed over the speakers. This is not a drill. Remain in your quarters immediately. Lucy pressed her face against the small window in her door. She could see guards running past, carrying weapons. Some of them looked frightened. That scared Lucy more than anything. What could frighten the guards? It took 2 hours before anyone told them what was wrong. When Grax finally came to her door, his forearms were shaking. "You," he said, pointing at Lucy. "You need to come with me. Now." "What happened?" Lucy asked. "The chains," Grax said. "The chains in the vault. They're breaking." Lucy's blood turned to ice. She followed Grax through the corridors to the command center. It was filled with people. Scientists, guards, officers from the consortium. Everyone was shouting and pointing at screens that showed the vault in sublevel 9. On the screens Lucy could see Draconeth. The glowing blue chains that had held him for 300 years were smoking. They flickered like dying lights. As she watched, one of the chains around his leg simply dissolved into mist. "This is impossible," a scientist was saying. "Those chains were designed by the best engineers in the galaxy. They're powered by dark matter generators. They should last for 10,000 years. "Well, they're not lasting," an officer snapped. "They're falling apart right in front of us. We need answers." That's when someone noticed Lucy. A guard named Thomas pointed at her. "That's her. That's the human who's been going down to sublevel 9. Every eye in the room turned to Lucy. She felt her stomach drop. "Is this true?" the officer demanded. "Have you been visiting the prisoner?" Lucy swallowed hard. There was no point in lying. "Yes, sir." "Why?" "I just wanted to talk to him." He was alone. The officer's face turned red. "You talked to the most dangerous prisoner in this facility? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I didn't do anything wrong," Lucy said, though her voice shook. "I just talked to him." "Take her to a holding cell," the officer ordered. "Now." 2 guards grabbed Lucy's arms. She tried to protest, but they dragged her away from the command center. They threw her into a small cell and locked the door. Lucy sat on the cold metal bench and put her head in her hands. What had she done? For 3 days Lucy stayed in that cell. Guards brought her food and water, but no one would talk to her. She had no idea what was happening with Draconeth or the chains. On the 4th day, a woman came to see her. She was human, which surprised Lucy. The woman was older, maybe 50, with gray hair tied back in a tight bun. She wore a scientist's uniform. "My name is Dr. Helen Price," the woman said. "I need to ask you some questions." "Am I in trouble?" Lucy asked. "That depends on what you tell me," Helen said. She sat down across from Lucy. "I've been studying the chains. I need to know exactly what you did during your visits to the vault." Lucy told her everything. The conversations through the intercom. The stories Draconeth had shared. And finally the soup. Helen's eyes widened. "You brought him soup?" "Yes, ma'am. It was warm. Homemade. I just thought he deserved something better than that awful paste they feed him." Helen stared at Lucy for a long moment. Then she started to laugh. It wasn't a mean laugh, but one of pure amazement. "Do you know what you've done?" "Broken the rules?" Lucy said quietly. "No. You've solved a 300-year-old mystery." Helen pulled out a tablet and showed Lucy a series of charts and diagrams. The chains were designed to hold physical power. They can contain energy, strength, force. They were designed by engineers who believed that power was the only thing that mattered. "I don't understand," Lucy said. "The Flame Ancients have unique biology," Helen explained. "Their power is connected to their emotions. For 300 years, Draconeth was filled with rage and hatred. That made him powerful, but the chains could hold that kind of power. They were designed for it." She paused. "But you gave him something the chains were never designed to contain." "What?" "Hope. Compassion. Kindness." Helen smiled. "Your simple act of bringing him warm soup triggered something in his biology. It awakened feelings he hadn't experienced in centuries. The chains couldn't hold that. They were never meant to." Before Lucy could respond, the alarms started again. This time they were louder, more urgent. Helen's radio crackled. "Dr. Price. The chains are completely gone. The prisoner is free." Lucy felt panic rising in her chest. "What's going to happen?" Helen stood up and opened the cell door. "Come on. You need to see this." They ran together through the corridors. When they reached the command center, everyone was frozen, staring at the screens. On every screen they could see Draconeth standing in his vault. The chains lay in puddles of melted metal at his feet. He stretched his wings for the first time in 3 centuries. Then he did something no one expected. He walked calmly to the vault door. With one movement of his massive claws, he tore it open. Guards raised their weapons, but Draconith ignored them. He walked through the corridors of Sublevel 9 until he reached the holding cells. He stopped in front of Lucy's empty cell and sat down. Like a patient dog, he simply waited. "What's he doing?" someone whispered. Helen looked at Lucy. "I think he's waiting for you." The prison went into full lockdown. Every door sealed shut. Every guard grabbed their weapons. Outside the prison, Lucy would learn later, 5 consortium battle fleets had surrounded the planet. They were ready to destroy everything rather than let Draconith escape. But Draconith wasn't trying to escape. He was sitting outside an empty cell, waiting patiently for a 19-year-old human girl. Helen took Lucy's hand. "Come on. He won't hurt you." "How do you know?" Lucy whispered. "Because if he wanted to hurt anyone, this entire prison would already be burning." They walked together down to Sublevel 9. Guards lined the corridors, their weapons pointed at the massive dragon. But Draconith didn't even look at them. His eyes were fixed on the elevator. When the doors opened and Lucy stepped out, Draconith's eyes began to glow softly. "Lucy Bennett," his voice rumbled. "They locked you away because of me." "It's okay," Lucy said, though her legs felt weak. "I knew the rules. I broke them." "You showed me kindness when the galaxy showed me only cruelty," Draconith said. "Now I will return that kindness." Before anyone could stop him, Draconith turned and walked toward the main communications room. Guards scattered out of his way. He was too large, too powerful. Shooting him would only make him angry. The communications room controlled all the prison systems, including the massive antenna array that could broadcast across the entire galaxy. Draconith entered the room and placed one massive claw on the control panel. "What are you doing?" an officer shouted. "Telling the truth," Draconith answered. He activated the broadcast system. His voice would now reach every planet, every ship, every station in consortium space. "People of the galaxy," Draconith began. "My name is Draconith. I am the last of the Flame Ancients. For 300 years the consortium has kept me in chains. They told you I was a monster. They told you I was too dangerous to live. But they never told you why I was really imprisoned." Lucy watched as Draconith told his story. He told the galaxy about his people, about their refusal to submit to consortium rule, about how they were hunted and killed. He told them about 300 years of suffering in a frozen cell. "But I am not here to speak of my pain," Draconith said. "I am here to speak of hope. 3 days ago, a human girl brought me a bowl of soup. It was warm. It was made with care. It was the first kindness anyone had shown me in 3 centuries. He turned and looked at Lucy. That simple act of compassion broke chains that were designed to last forever. The engineers who built those chains were brilliant. They could contain power and rage and strength. But they never thought to contain kindness. Because in this galaxy, kindness is seen as weakness." His voice grew stronger. "The consortium has ruled through fear and power for 1,000 years. They have imprisoned thousands without fair trials. They have silenced those who disagreed with them. They have forgotten what my young friend knows in her heart, that true strength comes from compassion, not cruelty." Officers in the communication room tried to shut down the broadcast, but Draconith's claw held the system in place. His message was reaching billions. "I could destroy this prison," Draconith continued. "I could take revenge for 300 years of suffering. But that would make me the monster they claimed I was. Instead, I offer the consortium a choice. Release all prisoners who were imprisoned without fair trials. Reform your laws. Remember that power without mercy is just tyranny. Do this, or I will spend the rest of my very long life exposing every corrupt secret you have buried." The room fell silent except for the hum of the broadcast equipment. Then Lucy stepped forward. Her voice was small compared to Draconith's, but it carried across the galaxy just the same. "My name is Lucy Bennett. I'm from Earth. I'm nobody important. But I want to tell you something. I brought him soup because he was hungry. I brought him warmth because he was cold. That's all. If that's weakness, then maybe the galaxy needs more weakness." She looked at the officers around her. "Humans are new here. You all think we're too soft, too emotional, too weak. Maybe you're right. But maybe caring about each other isn't weakness. Maybe it's the strongest thing we can do." The broadcast ended. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the officer's radio started crackling. Messages were flooding in from across the galaxy. Other humans in consortium space were speaking up, sharing stories of injustices they had witnessed. Other species were demanding answers about prisoners like Draconith. The message had spread like fire across dry grass. Within hours, the consortium's High Council called for an emergency meeting. Within days, they agreed to Draconith's demands. They couldn't afford to have their secrets exposed. They couldn't afford to look weak in front of the entire galaxy. Lucy stood beside Draconith as the announcement came through. Thousands of prisoners would be reviewed. New laws would be written. The consortium would reform. "You did this," Draconith said softly to Lucy. "One bowl of soup changed everything." Lucy shook her head. "We did this together." Helen approached them, smiling. "The council wants to meet with both of you. They're calling you ambassadors now. Looks like you have a new job, Lucy." Lucy looked up at the ancient dragon beside her. 3 days ago she had been a simple mechanic. Now she was standing at the center of a galactic revolution. All because she had brought soup to someone who was cold. 3 months had passed since the chains melted. Lucy still couldn't believe how much the galaxy had changed in such a short time. She stood on the observation deck of the new galactic peace station, watching ships come and go. Beside her, Draconith rested his massive head on his folded claws, his eyes reflecting the stars outside. "Are you nervous about today?" Lucy asked. "A little," Draconith admitted. "I have not seen my people in 300 years. I thought I was the last. But he wasn't the last. That was the most amazing discovery of all." After Draconith's broadcast, other flame ancients had begun to emerge from hiding. They had been scattered across the galaxy, hiding in remote systems, pretending to be extinct. When they heard that Draconith was free and that the consortium had changed, they started to return. Today 12 of them were arriving at the station. Draconith would see his people again. Lucy's own life had changed just as dramatically. She was no longer a mechanic's assistant. The consortium had named her an official ambassador. At first she had laughed at the idea. "I'm 19, she told them. "I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy." But Helen had smiled and said, "You know the most important thing. You know how to care." Now Lucy spent her days helping to reform the prison system. She visited facilities across the galaxy, checking on conditions, talking to prisoners, making sure no one else was suffering like Draconith had. Other humans joined her. It turned out that humans had a gift that other species had overlooked. They could look at someone and see their pain. The consortium had released over 3,000 prisoners in the first month alone. Many of them had been locked away for decades without proper trials. Some had been imprisoned simply for disagreeing with consortium policies. The reviews were still ongoing. Lucy had also started something she called the Soup Kitchen Protocol. It began as a joke, really. She told a reporter that if everyone in the galaxy simply shared a warm meal with someone who was suffering, half the problems would disappear. But people took it seriously. Now there were soup kitchen stations on 200 planets. They were places where anyone could go for food, shelter, and most importantly, compassion. Humans ran most of them, but other species were starting to help too. They were learning that kindness wasn't weakness, it was a kind of strength they had forgotten existed. The alert chimed. The ships carrying the flame ancients were arriving. Lucy squeezed Draconith's claw. "They're here." She watched as 12 dragons landed on the station's docking bay. They were all different colors: gold, silver, deep red, midnight blue. Some were even larger than Draconith. When they saw him, they cried out in voices like thunder. Draconith spread his wings and flew down to meet them. Lucy watched from above as they surrounded him, touching him with their claws, speaking in their ancient language. Some of them were crying those glowing tears. Draconith was crying too. He wasn't alone anymore. Helen found Lucy on the observation deck an hour later. "The council approved your request," she said. "You can take a week off. Go home. See your family." Lucy felt relief wash over her. She hadn't been back to Earth since all of this started. She missed her grandmother terribly. 2 days later, Lucy stood in her grandmother's small kitchen in Manchester. The room smelled like bread and herbs, exactly as she remembered. Her grandmother was stirring a pot on the stove, humming an old song. "Gran," Lucy said, "I brought someone to meet you." Her grandmother turned and saw Draconith trying to fit through the doorway. His head barely squeezed through. She didn't scream or run. She just wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. "Well," she said, "you must be the dragon I've been hearing about on the news. Would you like some soup?" They sat together in that small kitchen, a 19-year-old girl, an ancient dragon, and an elderly woman. They ate soup from bowls that were far too small for Draconith's claws. He had to be very careful not to break them. "Your granddaughter changed the galaxy," Draconith told the old woman. Lucy's grandmother laughed. "She always did have too much heart. Even as a little girl, she'd bring home every stray creature she found. Birds with broken wings, cats with torn ears. I told her mother, that girl sees someone hurting, she can't just walk away." The galaxy is better for it, Draconith said softly. Lucy's grandmother patted his massive claw. See, Lucy? I always told you soup fixes everything. Draconith laughed, a warm rumbling sound that shook the teacups. Almost everything, wise elder. Your granddaughter fixed the rest. Later that night, Lucy sat in her old bedroom, looking at the stars through her window. Her grandmother came in and sat on the edge of the bed. Are you happy, love? She asked. Lucy thought about it. 3 months ago she had been nobody, a mechanic's assistant that everyone ignored. Now she was helping to change the galaxy. But more than that, she had helped someone who was suffering. She had made a friend who would live for thousands of years. She had learned that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could break the strongest chains. Yes, Gran, Lucy said. I'm happy. Her grandmother kissed her forehead. Good. Now get some sleep. The galaxy can wait until morning. But the galaxy didn't wait. Even as Lucy slept, her story was spreading. On 1,000 worlds, people were learning that humanity hadn't conquered the stars with weapons or technology. They had conquered hearts with something much simpler. Compassion. Warmth. A bowl of soup given freely to someone in need. And sometimes that's all it takes to change the universe.